of the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board. We're delighted to say that all the members of the advisory board are present. So as we'll begin our meeting with the consideration of the minutes of the August 26th meeting of our board. You've had furnished a copy of those in advance. Are there corrections or additions to the minutes? Shall we approve them? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the August 26th meeting of our board. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? It's adopted. We move to item 3. We have a good number, 5 in fact, discussion action items that are very important. I know that on each of these you've had included in your packet the documents themselves, the resolutions themselves, and the signature of those who have reviewed them ahead of time. Eric is going to guide us through these, but you have copies in your packet, so if there are any questions as we go along, please feel free to ask them. Eric?
Thank you. The first item that is for your consideration this morning is a recommendation of a resolution to City Council to approve the MAPS 3 Implementation and Coordination Agreement for the Coeur d'Alene area. This is an agreement that we've discussed at our 2 past meetings, and just as a brief history, in September of 2009, the Council adopted the resolution setting forth the intent of the MAPS 3 program. In December, of course, we had the vote that officially began the program. March 2nd was the approval of the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Plan for the redevelopment of the urban renewal area. I think we've talked a little bit about the park being 70 acres of a 700-acre plan, but the park was included as a part of that March 2nd direction. And with all that has happened since last December, there was certain work that was necessary to begin the planning process with Council's direction to proceed. Some of those have included the relocation policies that we've previously discussed on how we would deal with property owners, making sure that there's a fair process in place. And so much work has already been done by Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority, their consultants and their agents, in anticipation of this day that we would actually be able to realize an agreement that could be reached between the city and Acura to formally move ahead on MAPS 3 work. And so the agreement that you have here is specifically just for the MAPS 3 portion of the Urban Renewal Plan. It's for primarily the acquisition of the downtown Central Park, and that's the work that's underway. There's been a lot of background up to this point, and so what you'll see is that this agreement is an annual agreement to be renewed fiscally. Every June 30, July 1st of every year, we'll do a renewal. The estimated cost to date for this upcoming year is $670,000. Of that, it includes $172,000 of an anticipated reimbursement. And again, this is going to be for all the work that was done since December through today. In both cases, our office, as staff, will be responsible for reviewing those invoices and making sure that they are compliant with MAPS 3 only work. And then we have a process already in place where we would process those payments. Of course, then expenses would be reported back to the advisory board. It would follow typical council process and so forth. With that said, a lot of the agreements that we have been including as informational items up to this point with the advisory board, those agreements are part of this overall plan. Those agreements for title services, those agreements for surveying and other services related to land acquisition are the exact agreements that Acura, with their management team and legal staff, will be utilizing under the direction of this contract. We do have Joe Van here, board with Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority, to answer additional questions, but with that, I would be happy to answer any as well.
Well, you have in your packet the 18-page implementation and coordination agreement. The action that is required of us is the resolution that precedes it in your packet. That style resolution approving the MAPS 3 implementation and coordination agreement for the Coeur d'Alene area. Are there any questions about either the contract or the agreement that we have? If not, would you approve the resolution? It's been moved. Motion's been made and seconded that we approve the resolution now before us approving the MAPS 3 implementation and coordination agreement for the Coeur d'Alene area. Is there further discussion? As many as favor the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may at this time, we have as an informational item, and it's on your screens now, you'll see that there is a map of the North Park. And I wanted to invite Jovan up to the podium to give us a brief update of where we are to date. And again, he's available if you've got questions regarding property acquisition and any of the work that Ocuro will be doing for us in the future. Thank you, Jovan.
I'm Jovan Bullard with the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority, basically acting as a subcontractor to the city for the acquisition of the MAPS 3 North Phase Central Park. Basically, on your map, the boundaries of the park are from Hudson with Harvey running down the middle and then over to Robinson on the east side. The lower part is the new right-of-way for the construction of the relocated I-40. And of course, the northern boundary will be where the I-40 comes down and becomes a boulevard up there. The colors on the map, you see the two big chunks and then the one little teeny parcel in there. Those are owned by the city already. That little parcel there, this was the old post office, and then you get down to the railroad station there on the south. There are 29 different parcels that we will be acquiring. These are valuation parcels. There'll be several parcels all under one owner, and so, but there's 29 owners that we'll be dealing with. The 5 that are the most critical right now are in the lower part, and those would be V23, 24, 21, 28, and 29. Those are necessary for the footprint of the Skydance Bridge, the pedestrian bridge that comes over the relocated I-40. And so to get that, those acquired and available for construction are the ones that we're working on now. Our appraisers that we have under contract have been given their assignments. We expect all the appraisals on the 29 different parcels to be completed by the end of November. Hopefully, keep your fingers crossed. Review appraisal process will take place during the first couple weeks of December. That's the timeline that we have scheduled out now. We have 6 individual appraisers working the area now. Letters of intent to purchase have been received by all of the owners in the area. This map, the colors will change on the map, if you'll notice on the legend there, from the dark blue that the city already has under ownership, but then if you go through the offer made is one color. Then if it goes into litigation, there's another color. The next color is under contract, and then finally it moves into the dark blue, the acquired. So monthly I will be over giving you an update of where we are in the process. One other thing I might mention, if you'll notice, I think there's 5 parcels that are there that are owned by ODOT. There's 3 on the very bottom block, and those have no numbers in them. The big chunk on the very bottom, and then one right above it, one over to the left, one right there, and then all the way up top next to the, that's the curvature of the access ramp for I-40, for the existing I-40. And the city has an agreement with ODOT for the acquisition, transfer of that property, so we will not be acquiring those through our efforts. That is something the city already has under agreement. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Basically, the one complete block that's just north of the old post office site is the Salvation Army site. The city and Salvation Army have been in communication for 6 months plus already on that, so that's well underway. So the process is begun.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Maybe a question for you or Eric. I'm just not clear. I looked at the resolution we just approved real close. I was fine with it all, in particular because of the amount that it was approved. And $670,000 obviously isn't enough money to buy a lot of property. So I'm just curious, the actual acquisition of the property, how will it be funded? Will it come back to us, then go to the city for actual payment of the property?
Yes.
Yep. And let me respond.
Relocation expenses. That's not included in this contract. When we're ready to close, it will be handed off to Amanda Carpenter and the city legal department. The closing will be done by the city, and the checks will be written by the city, it's my understanding, but it will come through this committee to look over.
So the agreement that's approved today is just for administration and management of the overall process with all the contractors involved. It does not include any property acquisition funds at all. With that, there's two avenues that property be acquired. One will be a contract being recommended from Acura that will bring back through the advisory board and onto the city council, and payments will be made directly by the city to those property owners. The other avenue is if we're unsuccessful in being able to negotiate a contract, we offer it up for condemnation. At that point, it'll be turned over to the city's legal services, and then we'll begin that process. But ultimately, again, city funds, direct payment will be made on those. Estimated value of the park is much more than this. It's in the $14 million range for the total property acquisition, and that's just an estimate at this time. Obviously, as we go into negotiations and bring contracts forward, we'll be updating that more closely, but that's the range of cost that we're talking about here.
One other question then is just to keep track as we go forward of what land the city already owns. I've barely seen, and you've mentioned a couple times, I think I know a couple pieces the city already owns. I know in the future I'd like to be able to keep track somehow of what we already own. We're not that hands-on. You guys in the city have it under control, but for example, that area already shown on the screen, I'm just curious what we already own and anything adjacent to it, what the city might already own.
So everything that you see in dark blue is owned by the city today.
Okay, but maybe I just couldn't see that. The legend is a little small, so maybe I couldn't tell what that
And
is.
we can get larger copies, but the dark blue represents acquired properties. And so on the bottom left, that is Union Train Station. The large parcel on the left is the post office, and then there's a small lot that you'll see in the upper right-hand corner that's already been acquired by the city. So everything in gray has yet to be acquired, or a tan color. The only areas that we're interested in are, of course, the park boundaries, which are identified by the green box on the drawing. That is the North Park. And so outside of that, there are other city ownership properties, but those are a part of the larger Court Ashore plan, and we're not planning to bring those back to the advisory board as it's a separate program and a separate process. We're focusing just on the park. The ODOT properties that were mentioned, we will turn those blue once the transfer has occurred. The status of those is that the transfer doesn't occur until the interstate has been relocated. So the agreement that the city has with ODOT is once the demolition of the old interstate can begin, the new interstate is complete, the transfer then occurs upon that date. And so those will most likely remain a gray or a tan color for quite some time.
For our understanding of this, Eric, when you say that the city will pay them directly and that the city already owns it, will all of the property that's acquired be paid for, that are used in this project, be paid with MAPS 3 funds?
Yes, everything.
As opposed to separate city funds of some kind?
Yes, so everything within the park that you see here, except for the properties that have already been acquired, will be MAPS 3 funded. The properties that are already blue were paid from other funding sources.
And the property that is transferred to ODOT, is there a cost associated with that?
It's an exchange agreement, and I'm not aware of, it's a separate agreement. I don't know if there's a cost or not. But it is a much bigger swap than what you see here on this drawing. I mean, if you can picture the interstate relocation that spans all of South downtown Oklahoma City, there's a much larger exchange of properties between the two entities. This is just the parts that are affecting the park. These 5 parcels that Jovan has identified for us today, that's just the park effect. Many more outside of this.
Eric, what is the timetable expected to acquire all this property?
The first 5 parcels, the ones that are most important for the Skydance Bridge, we're looking at hopefully having contracts by the end of the year. Construction of that bridge is in the design phase now, with anticipation that they'll actually be doing abutments and things in January. And so those are the high priority projects or parcels, and those are underway immediately. The others, I think there is a larger goal that in this first year that substantially most of the properties can be acquired in the first year of this contract for the North Park.
We're shooting for June 30th for the great majority of the properties to be in the city's hands.
June 30, 2011.
2011, yes, sir.
Other questions? Jovan, thank you very much for being here. Well, Eric, then we need to move forward with forwarding this on to the City Council, and so you all have recommended to us that we Oh, I guess the next item is about the post office. Is that right?
Right, so your adoption of the items today will automatically allow us to move those to City Council for final approval.
Okay. Well, you want to move forward with the post office then?
I'd be happy to. The next item on your agenda is recommend City Council approve specifications for the demolition of the Federal Post Office at 320 Southwest 5th Street. As we have the map still up on your screens, this would be the largest blue parcel that you see on this drawing, and that is the Federal Post Office owned by the city. We have owned that for quite some time, and we are ready to make demolition of that structure. It includes some environmental remediation, obviously with some asbestos abatement and lead-based paint abatement that will be included as a part of the demolition project. One thing that I'll bring to your attention is we have attached a portion of the specifications that will be utilized. We are possibly going to need to revise the bid date that's currently shown in this, and that would be a normal course of business for us. It looks like that we may not be able to receive bids until November. The demolition will completely raise the site except for one maintenance building. And as a part of the I-40 relocation, there was an agreement between the I-40 contractors and the city to allow Allen Contracting to utilize a portion of the post office site for staging and for maintenance of trucks and vehicles. And so that's on the southern edge of that. The agreement is that they'll use that up until a point next year, but in exchange for their use, they've agreed to fill in the basement once the building is demolished with dirt and compact and fill and bring that up to grade. They've also agreed to demolish the building that they're temporarily using when they're finished with it. So I say that we're going to demolish the building. We will be demolishing the entire large building, but there will be a small building still there when we're done that will be removed later next year. This is a typical specification that we use for city projects for demolition. Follows a typical format, and we would be going through a competitive bidding process to acquire a contractor to be selected that we would be bring back to this advisory board for recommendation before we proceed.
Well, the recommendation to approve these specifications for demolition has been included in your packet. Are there questions that you would have of Eric or others about it? Shall we approve it?
Eric, do you need an amendment to the date in the document?
So as we talk a little more about details, we have the opportunity through the bidding process to issue what we call addendums during bidding. It's a staff function that we're able to do. We bring those addendums back to you before we approve the contract, but we can amend things like dates through addendum. We also have the flexibility before we issue the document to bidders to amend that date. And I would suggest that we just amend that date knowing that it's not the date that's currently shown. It might have been better for us to just keep the document in a draft form before it got approved by council, and at that time insert the date. We will probably do that in the future. But we will change the date and make sure that it's accurate. If we have any other changes after the documents are issued, we'll use the addendum process. Those are documents that will be issued to the contractors during the bid phase, brought back to the advisory board and council when we recommend a contract for approval.
That date that's changed is October the 19th. That will be changed on the document that you have in front of you. Further questions?
Not directly on this, but just out of curiosity, the plans for the railroad depot, is that building planning to stay in as part of the park?
It is. It's very much a part of the focus of the entire plan for the park. So it's to not be demolished.
All right. Would you approve this recommendation for the specifications for demolition of the Federal Post Office? Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's adopted. Next is item C, that's on your agenda. Eric, would you walk us through that?
Thank you. This next item, item C, is recommend resolution to City Council to authorize city staff to initiate the selection process for the Senior Health and Wellness Center Scope of Work Development Project. I think last month we discussed there were some concerns raised by City Council that the Wellness Center project did not have the same level of information that the other projects had. You know, when we looked at our resource guide, it was just missing information because there's just not that much known about the wellness centers. The project that we are planning to ask for advertising and seeking a consultant on today is to do a scope of work only development for the senior wellness centers, which will allow us to engage and go through a process of identifying what should be in a senior wellness center, how large it should be, all the functions and things that are going to be necessary before we hire the design professionals to actually do the design. that'll help us get a better understanding of what this project really is included for Oklahoma City. And eventually, and as a part of the product, we'll issue a report for our use and information, and we can then put that into our resource guide and move forward on the project at that time. We're planning to use the consultant selection process that's going to be used for most consultants. It's one in which we'll advertise, and all those that are interested will submit letters of interest, and then we'll go through a selection process that includes a short listing and interviews. Once we interview, we'll enter into a contract, and they'll complete the work.
Do we have any idea of where these senior centers are going to be located throughout Oklahoma City? Is there any plan at this point?
We don't. There's been two, and there may be more different methods that we're looking into on that, I should say. One is geographically, obviously maybe a northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest kind of model, but that one may not be the best. The other one that we've discussed in-house is one that would locate them demographically in the areas of high concentration of our senior citizens. And so that's a study that we would rely on some of the new census data to help us with, but that's something that definitely is going to come into question and we're going to want to respond to accordingly. But no locations have been identified yet for any of the wellness centers.
I also have a question, is that in the consideration of these centers, is it being looked at that they may not be totally standalone, city-owned, but that there's a possibility of working with other agencies or community groups or even private business to enhance what we're able to do with these facilities through MAPS 3?
And there is, and that would be the third facet of the project. It's an unknown at this time, but something that we definitely want to study is community partners. And who are our partners in Oklahoma City that want to participate in the overall process of managing, possibly even an early part of the design for those? It's another unanswered question. The mayor and council are proceeding on some of those issues now, more specifically who the community partners may be. And as I learn more, I'll definitely bring that back to the advisory board.
Michael?
Yeah, Eric, just a quick question in terms of the consultant. Will most of all of the consultants' work be done prior to the formation of the subcommittee, or will the subcommittee have an opportunity to work with the consultant in any way?
I would hope and would anticipate that before we get too deep into the process that we'll have a subcommittee identified clearly so that we can do this work side by side. There is a process as the advertising and the engaging of the consultant that's going to take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, maybe sometimes longer, that we can go ahead and start now, and there's not any work that will be created. But our anticipation would be hopefully that the subcommittee is formed by that time and we will be working with them directly.
Thank you.
Barry?
Speaking to that, the mayor has requested of council that if the council knows anybody with a passionate desire to serve on the subcommittee for the wellness centers, to submit those names to the mayor, because he's beginning to think about the formulation of the subcommittee. So I think it would not be out of line also to throw that out to you all. If you know a person in the city who you've rubbed elbows with that has a passion for the wellness centers, if you'll pass that along to your councilman or councilwoman, they in turn can pass that along to mayor to form a committee of people who are passionate about the wellness centers, because as you've already picked up, there's very little design work, or if I said we're going to have a senior wellness center, everybody here, I think, would have a different idea of what constituted that, and that's all got to be crystallized, and this consultant is one of the steps toward that. But again, the formulation of the subcommittee is on the mayor's radar screen right now.
And Eric, one more. When would you expect staff would make that kind of selection of the consultant? I know I see it October 29th is when you expect to hear responses, but when will staff make that decision?
We actually haven't issued the advertisement yet for the senior health and wellness. So the advertisement that is attached, it would have a date of October 29th just for the first submittal. That would be the date which they submit the letter of interest. 6 to 8 weeks after that time frame to actually have a consultant on board, minimum. Probably late November at the earliest, and most likely December.
Further questions? You have in your packet a resolution that, for your consideration, it's been approved as to form by Amanda, and It's a resolution authorizing city staff to initiate the selection process for the Senior Health and Wellness Center scope of work development. That resolution has includes also the notice that would be sent. What's your pleasure? Motion's been made and seconded that we adopt the resolution. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The resolution's adopted. All right. Item D. Eric?
Item D in your packet today is the recommend resolution to City Council to authorize city staff to initiate the selection process for design services related to the MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Windscreen project. And as you will recall, last month we included some information from the Oklahoma City Boathouse Foundation. Mike Knopp had given us a presentation, and so this and the next item are somewhat related. In that longer list of items requested, there were two specifically that would be able to offer benefit to the U.S. Rowing Masters National Championship that's scheduled in August of 2011. And there's considerable work that needs to be done before then, before these two items can be erected, the first one being this windscreen project. We are looking at a windscreen along the 1,000-meter race course. This would be the race course that extends west of I-35 to the finish line. It is a windscreen that would help make more fair competitions with the lanes. As many of you know, with some of the strong Oklahoma wind that we receive in the summer from the south, the lanes that are closest to the embankment have an advantage to those that are on the far side. And so this windscreen is anticipating making sure that all 7 lanes or however many lanes that they are racing have equal fairness. This is, again, the consultant process that we will utilize in noticing. We'll receive letters of interest. We'll interview consultants. We would then recommend a contract and be bringing that contract back to approval. So with that, as one of the early start opportunities for MAPS 3 and the ability to make an impact and have some facilities ready on the river for next summer, we are recommending adoption of the resolution.
Questions? Michael?
Eric, this, I guess this notice that you're sending out, this list of, I guess, criteria that we want to be considered, that would be something, I guess, the subcommittee would normally go through to kind of make sure that we understand what's going on. I had a couple of questions. Is the windscreen envisioned on both sides of the river or only on one side?
Just on the south side of the river.
So you're stopping south winds.
Right. On the north side of the river, along the 1,000-meter race course, is where most of the boathouses are being erected now, and so there would not be an opportunity for a windscreen on that side.
And I noticed the grandstands also planned on the south side.
Yes.
And the windscreens are just, they hope to be accommodate projected or printed images. So those are going to be the same size as the grandstand.
You know, I'd like to say that we know a lot about the windscreen, but we really don't. It's a very specialized item. These are the requirements and some of the criteria that were submitted to us from the Oklahoma City Boathouse Foundation, but I think we'll know a lot more once we have a consultant on board that can really give us some real information and some visual of what one of these really looks like. I have probably many of the same questions that you do, which again is the reason to engage the consultant early and get the process started.
So on these two projects, you have the lighting coming up as the other project, and they very much seem like very much related to each other. Certainly the design, where you're going to place your poles, things like that would have to be considered. Do you anticipate the same consultant maybe on both projects, or should we have a criteria in there that they work together and consider each other's plans in doing this?
I do see it as two different consultants, unless there's just a consultant that has a similar capability in-house to do these two very different projects, but we would make sure that they're coordinated, understanding that they're probably going to be separate. That's something that we're very familiar with and can be done, and we would just make sure that they are making sure that there's no impact between each other where the light pole or, say, a standard for the windscreen would be located.
Michael, I just said I'm on the Boathouse Foundation, and there has been a plan presented that takes all those things into account. That doesn't mean that it's going to be adopted, but all of those things have been taken into account in the presentation that they have made to the Boathouse Foundation. So I think your questions are good ones, and I think those things are being...
Well, they're doing a great job down there, and it's very impressive what's going on, and it's certainly one of the projects that, we have an opportunity to get started on and show something's moving on it. But I was just curious, just trying to understand how it all fit in. And see if we had any other criteria that we might need to make sure was considered.
And there may be, and I think that's one of those that after we get a consultant that actually looks at the land and does surveying and starts really looking at the actual windscreen itself versus some conceptual drawings that are available today, we may learn a lot more later.
Thank you.
I thought it was okay for some of the home teams to have an advantage by having the right lanes, but probably in the sense of fairness, this is an okay thing, I think. Okay, is there further discussion? All right, shall we adopt the resolution that's in your packet? Is there a motion? Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. We adopt the resolution regarding the resolution authorizing the staff to initiate the selection process for professional services to provide design services for the Match 3 Oklahoma River windscreen. As many as favor that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is adopted. Item E.
This will be your final action item for today, and it's similar to the one we just previously considered. Recommend resolution to City Council authorizing city staff to initiate the selection process for professional services related to the MAPS 3 River Race Course lighting improvements. I think Mike Knopp also mentioned at the last meeting one of the opportunities that they've had on the Oklahoma River is to provide night racing capabilities, but they've had to do that using temporary lighting. It was something that was highly successful at some of the previous events, and so the request has come to put the permanent lighting in to offer that so that they can avoid having to do the temporary measures. Again, we're looking at just the 1,000-meter race course. I do anticipate it being a separate consultant, therefore it is also a separate advertisement, but we would issue these simultaneously, so in the event that it were the same, it could be. But with that, the estimated cost and the costs for both of these have come from the River Master Plan. Costs have yet to be determined, and that's something we'll go through the consultant and do estimating and such, but we are recommending approval of this resolution to proceed with the river lighting package.
Questions about the river lighting? Further discussion? All right. Would you approve this resolution to authorize the city staff to initiate the selection process for professional services to provide design services for the MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Race Course lighting improvements? Is there a motion? Been moved. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? It's adopted. Item 4 on our agenda for today is a program update that includes several items that we've asked Eric to bring us up to speed on. Eric?
I've got about 5 or 6 items for you this morning. One of the items that you're going to notice is that there was not a financial report included in your packet today, and this will occur once a year. The city is still in its year-end closing, and so we have not officially closed out last fiscal year. And all the trusts and all the boards that receive their reports at this time typically have to receive two reports in the month following. So next month we'll actually have 2 financial reports, the one that would have normally been available this month and next. And so it's something that will occur again next year, but I'll bring that information back to you. I am happy to report that we did receive, another sales tax check. It was about $8 million. It was, again, over our projected target. But again, I think those are good things. One of the items that I know that City Manager Couch has mentioned to others is what we're seeing, and we believe is some improvement in the tax due to some of the storm damage that occurred in late June. There are a lot of out-of-state contractors that are in town doing a lot of repair. There's a lot of materials being installed on roofs and mechanical equipment and some things, and so a lot of the additional funds that are being received, we believe, are being attributed to that effect. And so it's something that we're going to continue to monitor, and I'll provide future reports. Last month, we talked about our program consultant, and we've made some progress on the program consultant selection. We did receive 10 proposals last week, and we are now officially beginning the process for the selection of a consultant for the MAPS 3 program. With that, we've talked about a selection process that's been used by the city for quite some time. We call it the selection of architects, engineers, and planners. It's used on all city projects, and it's the one that we're using here. There's 2 parts to this process, first being a short list development. Obviously, with 10 proposals, it would be nearly impossible to interview 10 different consultants for one position. And so a short list is typically created with this process where we'll identify the top 3 candidates for interview. Then we'll go through a formal interview process. But to do that, we need a selection committee. And the process identifies that the committee will contain a representative of the city manager's office, the Public Works Department, specifically the city engineer, and then the department requesting the advertisement, which is us, the MAPS 3 program, and myself. What we've done, though, on Maps for Kids that was very successful was included school board members and trustees in the actual process, and we're recommending that we also use advisory board members in that process as well. And so to kick us off, I visited with Chairman McDaniel, and we're looking at doing a rotation of advisory board members as we go forward, but we're looking to utilize Ms. Morales and Mr. Boatwright to kick us off on the process where they would participate in the shortlisting and then also the interviews and be able to bring back to the advisory board some of their personal thoughts and information, and it won't just be coming from staff. And so we're prepared to do that, and each of you will get an opportunity to participate, and we'll just go ahead and rotate those. But this is just the first one that we're beginning.
Eric, could I interrupt there to say that there will also we'll be utilizing the same kind of process that the city has in place for consultants for the subcommittees. And so we're thinking the same way that there would be members of the Board of Advisors would participate in those, and members of the subcommittee would participate in those as well. So, for example, if we, when we get to the point of having someone select consultants for the all of the other subcommittees, but for example, the one that's already been appointed, that would be for the location of the convention center. People from this board would be appointed to serve on that selection committee as well as the subcommittee members. So that is a process that if you, and Eric and I invite your input into this, we think it's important to have the advisory board have input from the beginning on that process as well as the subcommittee members, because the subcommittees will be bringing back recommendations to us. We will then be forwarding recommendations to the city council, and with the number of subcommittees we have and the number of consultants we're going to be considering, it seems as though there will be plenty of work for all of us to do. Does that seem to be an agreeable thing, or would you have any comments about that or ideas, or do you feel okay about that?
We have found this to be tremendously successful on the Maps for Kids project. I mean, it provides you that first line and that first-hand experience in the overall process, and hopefully will raise your comfort level about what we go through when we actually take a list from 10 to 3 to 1 and bring forward a recommendation to negotiate a contract with just one of those firms. But again, we do invite any additional comments that you might have, but with that, answer any questions that you might have as well.
Eric, I don't recall exactly the terminology, but in the MAPS resolution, there was another subcommittee that wasn't on any of the projects.
Architectural review.
Okay. So that wasn't part of this. That's a different process, I guess.
Right. I believe that is more for an overall design intent of the MAPS 3 program to make sure that we have quality projects, so that those final designs, whether that be of wellness centers or convention centers or central parks, that make sure that they're compatible use and that they're with the intent of MAPS 3.
So they might have an input into all the projects. All right. Well,
any questions? I'll be happy to answer any. I'll move on to the next item. The convention center site selection consultant has also been advertised, and those are being distributed this week. There's a lot of interest also on this project. Those are due on Tuesday, October the 12th, and then we'll be going through a very similar process where we want to identify that selection committee, and we'll go through, again, a short listing and interviews for that project as well. The Okura contract that implementation and coordination agreement that was approved today, included in the packet is the 12th contract that you have seen since we began. There is a 13th, and I believe will be the final that we hopefully will have to you in the next month or so. But those contracts, again, are the ones that Okura is using to do appraisal, surveying, title work, and the things for all of these properties. And so that's included in your packet as an informational item. And the last item I have for you today, the Convention Center Subcommittee and the Park Subcommittee have been named. Next Tuesday, my understanding is the mayor will be appointing with council the Transit Subcommittee. So it is the next, it'll be the third, and additional subcommittees will then follow. Have forwarded the advisory board's comments to the mayor regarding the other subcommittees, and so I know that those have been received, and so they're still making plans to process these subcommittees very soon. But with that, I don't have any additional updates, but would be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the program.
Any questions for Eric on that? Okay, shall we move to item 5, the informational items, Eric?
I don't have any additional to offer on these. Again, this is...
You've already covered those?
This is the contract, and then we've also included in your packets a copy of the map that was discussed earlier. And we will update this map monthly is our goal, and you'll actually see the colors change from a no-color status to a medium and dark blue status as they require.
Could I ask a question? The contracts or the letters of interest have all gone out to all the landowners around the area, is that right?
So they've been noticed.
They've
yes.
been noticed. Has there been any kind of protest or any monetary figures sent out yet?
That I'm not aware of any protest particularly. I do know that the agent, Pinnacle, who has been engaged by Okura, is doing those individual contacts now. Is there any additional information, Joanne, that you'd like to offer? We'll bring those forward as they occur, but I don't think there's anything significant at this time.
Okay.
Okay.
One other question, Eric. Actually, it's just a request. When we get the map update every month, could we have a date on it?
Yes, we can add the date. I'll be happy to do that.
It might be there, but I can't see it.
If Susan can't see it, I can't see it. I know that. All right. Are there other comments by members of the board? Questions for Eric or comments?
Just a random thought, sort of, Eric. I kind of have those from time to time. As we move forward on these projects, and maybe it would be more appropriate when we get to the subcommittee level, but I think it might be helpful, at least for me, to have the opportunity to kind of visually kind of visit some of these sites and some of the things that are going on. And again, maybe that would be inappropriate on the advisory board level because we have to read it here and be videotaped or whatnot. But just a thought to keep in mind going forth, I think, whether we're talking about the river or the park, there just might be an opportunity to actually kind of visit. I'm kind of reminded of the old TV shows where the judge has the jury go out to the site, kind of get a sense of what's going on. Just a thought.
And I think we can accommodate. It's not uncommon for the previous MAPS projects that we've had where we've actually had tours of sites, and we'll be happy to facilitate that as we start to make progress. So that would be very much included as a part of what we do. Larry?
Yeah, if I could, I think most of you know that I sit on the Trails Advisory Committee also. So the Trails Advisory Committee met the first Friday in September, and they asked me to bring before you all their desire that they would like to see the work on the trails to be also started similar to the work that's been going on in some of the other MAPS projects. And so I told them I would do that. As you know, the trails that are included in the MAPS project have been identified. They are probably ready for work to go. And in the past, the trails have been all run, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, by the Parks and Recreation people. They've done the design work themselves. They've done the contract negotiations and the construction oversight, and et cetera. But the Trails Advisory Committee would like to have you all aware of the fact that they think that this is an area of the MAPS 3 initiatives that could be started in the near future, and would like to see, if you agreed, maybe give some direction to Eric to proceed in that way.
All right. In addition to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about one other factor. Some of you have contacted Eric or me about the process for the appointment of the subcommittees and the how you will be notified. And the fact is that those subcommittees are recommended, appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. And when that action is officially taken, at the council meetings, then Eric is notified and he's been notifying me, and I have been sending them a note. But what we need to improve on is notifying all of you as to who has been appointed to those subcommittees. And so Eric and I are going to have sorted out a way to do that. He'll be notifying you as soon as those are official. And some of you have asked, either didn't see or perhaps didn't know about the appointment of the Parks Committee. And Eric has that information. He's going to share it with you now.
So for the Parks Subcommittee, we have Kimberly Lowe is going to be our chair, Michael Dover, vice chair, and then the at-large are Bill Cameron, Kerry Watkins, Anthony McDermott, Miles Tolbert, Michelle Martin-Coyne, Zora Brown, and Fred Hall. And so, one of the next questions that may be is when we will be scheduled to meet, and we're working towards goals to make sure that when we meet, we've got items to consider and decisions to be made. And so that is obviously with action occurring now on the park, I would anticipate Parks Subcommittee meetings beginning next month.
Eric, I do have a question on that. On the original organizational chart that we received that looked at the advisory board and then umbrellaed all the subcommittees under it, of those subcommittees, Parks and Trails were lumped together. So is it still clear that the Parks Subcommittee is also encompassing trails as well?
So at a council meeting about 2 weeks ago, there was an amendment to the resolution that created the advisory board, and the parks was separated from trails and sidewalks. So they're now two separate committees. So if you just keep that in mind, the park will be by itself, and then trails and sidewalks will be combined, but in a separate subcommittee.
And further to that, then, would it be possible to get an update of that organizational chart showing committee members under that as a way to keep posted of who's associated with which project on subcommittee?
And I will, and I'll send that out to each of you.
All right. Any further staff comments, Eric or others? Well, we want to open the floor to any citizens who are here who would like to address the Citizens Advisory Board. Are there any questions or comments from citizens? Well, hearing none, is there further business? If not, we stand adjourned. Thanks for attending.